Is the beard alright? Welcome back, all you sonorous sailors. It's been a while since I've put out a long-form video, but after all, I'm just a man. And, it's been so long that you might not even remember them. After all, for every YouTuber, your luck eventually runs out. And then you might feel like you're done for, or no longer you, and then you're suffering because you just want to be legendary. But it can be dangerous, and that is really the challenge. No, seriously, I couldn't have fit one more of those epic puns in there. Welcome back, guys. If you were wondering why my eyebrows were doing so much heavy lifting, it's because I was referencing a bunch of songs from a pretty epic musical. Okay, I'll stop now. If you haven't listened to it, Epic the Musical is a musical written about the Odyssey and the whole journey of Odysseus from his time in Troy all the way back to his arrival in Ithaca. It is super duper fun. I highly recommend it. If you haven't listened to it already, go ahead and check it out. I'll link all the stuff for the cast and crew in the cards. They're amazing. This video is going to have spoilers about the story of Epic, so if you haven't listened to it, fair warning now, go listen to it now. I'm gonna just wait for you to do that. Just chilling. Okay, we're good. Epic has got to be one of my favorite musicals of all time because of all the wonderful storytelling techniques that are employed throughout the entire musical. Today we're going to be looking at those storytelling techniques and how we can use them in our own stories. Also, if you hear me referring to Jay, that is the main singer as well as the writer of all of the Epic the Musical stuff. Alright, without any further ado, here are my 5 storytelling techniques to take from Epic the Musical. Number 1. Okay, my first storytelling technique is a trait that all good characters have, and that is some sort of drive or motivation. In Epic the Musical, we see this from the very first song. Like, they're literally shouting it. Like, it's like, what do you live for? What do you try for? What do you wish for? What do you fight for? It's incredible. Throughout the entire musical, Odysseus is trying to make his way back from Troy to Ithaca, where his beloved wife Penelope and son Telemachus are waiting. This gives added attention to every single moment and gives Odysseus something to fight for, something to push on for. You don't always have to be so forward with this information, but I think Jay does a great job of showing us exactly why Odysseus is fighting. In the process, giving us more empathy for this character and really giving us a way to look into their decisions and seeing why they're doing these crazy things. Odysseus loves his wife and son and will do anything to get back to them. This starts out by him fighting Trojans, but ends with, spoilers, him sacrificing his entire crew to get back to his loved ones. Number 2. Next up, we have a skill that I have personally struggled with, both as a writer and as a game master, and that is mixing moods. Let me tell you more about that. I have difficulty bringing in characters that feel like they might go against the common grain of the story. Something like if I introduce a funny character anywhere throughout the plot, that they will somehow take away from the depth or credibility of the entire story. However, this leads to a very dry and one-dimensional story, and I think Jay gives us a great example of how to bring characters in that might not otherwise fit the setting. Let's set the scene. Odysseus has just stepped off the edge of his ship, his feet sinking into the sand of a floating island. His first in command steps up beside him, bringing up worries of the storm that blocks their path. You can feel the seeds of rebellion beginning to take root. Enter the Winions, a bunch of tiny, cartoonish wind spirits dancing around and singing in high-pitched voices. It's a complete mood flop. Literally 2 songs ago, we were saying goodbye to the main character's mentor in an incredibly emotional song. But now we have these tiny Winions dancing around, and I honestly love it. Keep Your Friends Close is honestly one of my favorite songs because it's hilarious and fun to sing, but it also gives us a much needed break from the emotional tension of the entire musical up to this point. And it sets the stage for the next song perfectly. I think one of the biggest risks of running a high stakes, high intensity story is that it just becomes too much. Eventually, the ever evolving emotional stakes are gonna just seem too high or just get boring. But if we throw in moments like these of reprise from the main action, funny characters coming into this emotional setting, it really sets up so that moments that are emotional are even more intense. Number 3. Alright, this next one is short and sweet, and it's about creating cues for characters. If you've watched any of the behind the scenes, or all of them like me, you may have seen that Jay incorporates a specific sound or vibe that accompanies each of the characters. For a lot of these, this is a musical instrument, but for some, it is actually a lyrical pattern. There are things like the fact that Odysseus is always accompanied by a guitar, or Athena has her piano, or Eurylochus is always accompanied by the sound of his crew behind him. This in itself is almost like an instantaneous form of foreshadowing, setting a mood for your players or audience so that they know what to expect from the scene. You can either do this by changing up your tone of voice so the players know when something really important is about to happen. Or you can do something like putting on a specific soundtrack whenever a big bad is approaching, almost like your very own personal boss music. Honestly, a little bit goes a long way with this, and I really encourage you to try it out. Number 4. This next concept is about using characters around the main characters, and it comes down to the basic idea of how do you hurt Superman? No, I'm serious, think about it. Superman is designed as a character to be the strongest, toughest, most perceptive person ever. So how do you hurt him? I know some of you are going to say kryptonite, and that's a good answer, but not the correct one. The answer is Lois Lane. And here's why. It can sometimes feel really hard to ever get at a main character because they have, whether we like it or not, plot armor to some extent. However, this same plot armor does not necessarily extend to those around them, and Epic the Musical does a great job with this. We see this in songs like Polyphemus, Ruthlessness, Scylla. Anytime Jay wants to get at Odie, he really takes it out on his crew. Now, this is not a blanket rule. You should not always be targeting characters other than the main characters, but it is a great way to shake things up, especially when the main characters are feeling exceptionally strong and need to be reminded of how dangerous the villain is. Number 5. Alright, finally we have bringing in character backstory. Remember those motivations and drives we talked about way back in the beginning of the video? Yeah, if your character isn't actively chasing one of those motivations, then they're not really a part of the story. One of the best ways to keep characters engaged and in the story is to have it incorporate their backstory, their motivations, their villains. This might seem obvious for writing a book, but for improvisational storytelling like role-playing, it can be really tempting to put characters into a world and a story completely designed by you that doesn't really include what their characters are all about. This is a really easy way to cause a disconnect between a character and a setting. And so try to avoid this by yes-anding what your characters have already come up with. Let their backstory drive what the campaign does, and a lot of times, it's really fun. It's incredibly rewarding to see a player come to life when they realize that the big bad they've been chasing this whole time is actually their character's secret brother. We see this in Epic in the incredible climax at the end of the musical, where Odysseus returns to Ithaca and has to face a horde of suitors. For about 80% of the musical, he's off on other shores, but in this moment where it counts, he's back where his character originated from. And I truly love this. There is an epic line in the musical where the suitors are battling him throughout these halls, and one of them is trying to rally the rest of the suitors by saying, "We know these halls. The odds can't be tilted. And then Odysseus from the shadows steps out in an epic moment saying, "You don't think I know my own palace? I built it." It's crazy. It's an awesome moment. But I love the idea that this brings to the game. How incredible would it be if your characters get to play the last sessions on their home turf, where they get to be the heroes of the story? I think that's exactly what we're looking for. Now, every game and story is different, and so not every scene will get to play out on the character's home turf, but it's just important to remember to tie in the character's backstory to give them more stakes in what's happening throughout the plot. Thank you, everybody. That is the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, go ahead and hit a big old like button. It really helps me out, and I would really appreciate it. If you want to see some more Prismatic Wizard shenanigans, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and be sure to check out some other videos on the channel. But until then, keep it chromatic.